What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the One and O podcast. I'm Avery Hill.
I'm Lexi Linderman.
I'm Will Horseman.
This week, we finally got the AP poll. That'll be a lot of what we touch on. There's also a lot of things going on within the defensive line room, so we'll kind of get into that as well. To start, again, AP poll. Penn State got their official ranking in the preseason AP poll. Number two, sitting right behind Texas, who has number one. Guys, what were your thoughts? Was Penn State ranked fairly, and what did you think about the list overall?
I think Penn State was ranked fairly. I think it was definitely super close between Penn State and Texas. It was only two votes of separation. Texas had 25 first place votes and Penn State had 23. I think that kind of shows you the consensus of like who the top two teams are in college football this season on paper, of course, because you never really, no, I mean, the preseason poll always has a lot of things wrong with it. There's always a team who wasn't ranked inside the top 25 that like ends up in like the top 10. So like you never know what's going to happen, but it seems like everyone thinks Texas and Penn State are the best two teams, and I would agree with that. I mean, I think based on the offseason, that's just pretty much how it is. I mean, Penn State brought back so many amazing returning talent. All of their watch, like on every watch list, they have like the most selections, if not tied for the most, or like one behind. Like it's clear the talent that Penn State has. Same with Texas. I mean, obviously. I think it all kind of depends on how Arch Manning actually, looks this year. People are really, really high on him, but I think that's just because of the time, the few games he got to play in last season. People saw flashes. They think he's going to be really good. So I think they're going off of that, but also just like the full roster as well. I do think it's interesting. It's two coaches in the top two. I feel like people historically don't really have trust in when it comes to big games. And you have Steve Sarkisian, James Franklin, two guys. People don't really have a ton of trust in. I mean, they're both good recruiters, everything like that. So it'll be interesting to see, both of them actually stay in the top two as the season goes on. Ohio State, obviously Ohio State, Texas week one, that's going to change something. If Ohio State wins, Ohio State will probably jump. So it's going to be interesting to see how that all plays off. But overall, I didn't really have any like issues with the poll. I thought it was interesting to see Michigan all the way up at 14, kind of after the year they had last year. But I guess Bryce Underwood will do that. So everything, but yeah, overall, I thought the poll was pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why they would rank like Penn State number two. I mean, obviously, like Lexi said, I mean, they're projected as gonna have like one of the best seasons this year. But the only like real issue, and it's that I know that like the preseason poll doesn't really factor in stuff that like happened like last season, like previous years, and it's really just more focused on like how stuff projects as for this season. But I do feel like Ohio State should just be above Penn State in a preseason poll because I mean, until proven otherwise, I Ohio State is consistently beating Penn State. So I feel like at least to start and when both teams have the same record, obviously when like Texas, Ohio State, that will kind of ch change stuff up. But I feel like at the start or just when both Penn State and Ohio State have the same record, I think like Ohio State should pretty consistently always be above Penn State. But I mean overall, I think it's a fair ranking for Penn State.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest debate, like before the rankings came out, if you were to ask me where would Penn State go, I would say 100% top three. I think where the committee ranks Ohio State and obviously where the committee ranks Texas is kind of two of the biggest things. Obviously, Ohio State's coming off a national championship. You still have Jeremiah Smith returning. They lose, Judkins. They lose Travion Henderson. They lose guys on the defensive end. But again, Caleb Downs is back. Julian Sand is probably the starting quarterback, as far as I know. I don't think that's a drop off from Will Howard. I think if you compare Will Howard to the quarterbacks that have been at Ohio State in the past 10 years, I don't think he's one of the best ones. Obviously, he was good enough to win the national championship, but I don't think if you had a tier ranking of Ohio State quarterbacks that he's at that top Ohio State quarterbacks, even in the last 5 years. So I don't think there's much of like that, drop off because again, preseason rankings look at who you lost and who you brought in. That's a big reason why Penn State, who brought back nearly everyone, obviously not Abdul Carter and Tyler Warren, and the couple other guys, KJ Winston, like we can go on and on, but they didn't lose as many guys as a lot of other programs, and they lost a lot of, I mean, and they kept a lot of big time contributors. You bring back Nick Singleton, you bring back Katron Allen. The questions that existed were in the receiver room, and you bring in three transfer receivers, all who have seemed to be good so far. Obviously, they haven't been able to really play anyone other than themselves. So we'll see. And I mean, they'll be playing Nevada, FIU, and Villanova in the first 3 weeks. So we'll see again because you do have cases like I know this is like way off topic, but you do have like cases where Maryland and Ty Felton is like leading the nation in yards and everything, and their head coach is saying like he's a Heisman candidate, and then they played Michigan State and Northwestern, but they play some sort of competition and changes. So we'll kind of see how that goes. As far as Penn State and Texas, I do think it's a very tight contested battle because I mean you do have Arch Manning. You look at the defensive side of the ball, they have some stars. I would say that argument really comes down to the defense, really. Because again, like Texas has Anthony Hill at linebacker. They have Colin Simmons, like they have star power. And then that defensive front, you can always trust a Texas defensive front. But the same goes with Penn State. I think the one thing holding Penn State back from that is losing Abdul Carter and even like losing Kobe King because you had questions in the linebacker room. But again, if you look at the defensive line, that's always something that you can trust in Penn State. So I thought that was interesting. I mean, if you look at the rest of the rankings, you take the Big Ten again. Ohio State number 3, Oregon's at number 7. Illinois at 12, which I thought was interesting. I didn't think I thought Illinois would easily be ranked. I didn't know if they'd be as high as number 12. Especially if you look at like some of the schools over them, like South Carolina is at number 13, and we know South Carolina is going to continue to get a lot of buzz. Indiana dropped down to number 20. Ole Miss is right behind them at 21. And even Boise State is still ranked. We'll see how long that lasts. Ashton Genty's gone, folks. So we'll kind of see how long that lasts. But yeah, did anything else kind of stand out to you guys, in terms of the poll rankings at all?
I do think like you bring up a good point with Illinois at 12. I think there is a lot of hype around them because Luke Altmaier's back. All of their star receivers are pretty much back, and that offense, looks to be really good. I think it'll just be interesting to see how it actually shapes out because like you said, Avery, the buzz is there around South Carolina. Like everyone thinks Lenora Sellers could end up being a top 5 quarterback when it's all said and done this year. And so there's teams behind them. Like if Bryce Underwood is like actually the truth, like I could see Michigan jumping them at some point. It's just gonna be interesting to see like where because I feel like Illinois is one of the teams like I feel like 12 is high, just like based on like history. Like, I feel like Illinois like is not a program where you're like, oh, that's a top 15 like team ever. But like based on what they have, like I guess you can make that argument, and I can see like where the poll voters are coming from there because a lot of the teams under them like are unproven, especially after last year. Like South Carolina obviously started horribly and then like just really picked up at the end. So you don't really know like what's gonna come from them at the beginning. Like Michigan, you expect them to be good with Bryce Underwood. You always expect them to be good, but like last year they like weren't that good. So it's like just interesting to see like that Illinois is really getting that respect because I feel like it's kind of been like a not really talked about thing. Like Illinois could be a top 4, 3 team in the Big Ten. I mean, probably not 3 because Oregon, but so just interesting to see how that plays out. But I feel like 12 is just like a little high because like at that, like obviously there's like the conference bids, but like you're considering them like a playoff team at that point. And I don't really know if I see Illinois as a playoff team, but I also don't really put a lot of stock in the preseason poll. So it'll just be interesting to see like how that plays out. But
I mean, could definitely see Illinois as a playoff team. I mean, you look at their schedule. I mean, you had like they really only playing like Ohio State, Indiana. That's like probably their 2 hardest games. It's like, and they get Ohio State at home, so it's I could see a path to like 10-2 at least for them, and a 10-2 in the Big Ten in the 12-team playoff era. That could get them in, or I mean that should give them like a pretty good shot at getting into the playoffs. But then otherwise, I mean, obviously, it seems like the precinct poll, they like their like the quarterbacks. I mean, you look behind Illinois, you got Lenore Sells, South Carolina, Bryce Underwood, Michigan, and DJ Lagway, Florida. So it's 3 quarterbacks that are all kind of projected as like should have a good season this year. So you can definitely see. I think the precinct poll kind of prioritize that, but otherwise, like. I mean, like says like a preseason poll is like stuff is going to change. I mean, we'll see like stuff when stuff happens like for real when like the college football playoff poll like starts coming out mid-season. It's like that's when stuff actually starts to matter.
the other thing I was kind of surprised about also that I forgot to say was Clemson at 4, which like I feel like isn't like that insane. Like I think they're gonna be really good because Kate Klubnik is really, really good. But like having them above Georgia, I was just like a little surprised. Same with like Notre Dame. Like they both, like Georgia and Notre Dame both made it really far, or Oregon didn't make it really far in the college football playoff because they got rolled over by Ohio State. But like they were 13-0 in the regular season last year. And it's just interesting to see that the poll voters like had that much trust in Clemson, who like won the ACC last year, but like wasn't really, all that. Like the ACC wasn't good. And then they, didn't do well in the playoffs. So it's interesting to see them think Clemson is a top 14, which like I agree with, but just like having them over Georgia, it's just like a little bit of a shock. 'Cause I feel like everyone just always expects Georgia to be, a top 4, 5 team. So that was interesting as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Clemson, like one, they lucked into ACC championship game it happened to win. Let's be honest. It was clearly a race between Miami and SMU, but then Fran Brown had something to say about it, and all this happens. So, like, first of all, but I do think, like, I think Clemson's a playoff team this year. I do think Cade Klubnik does move the needle like that. Not that, he wasn't there last year, but he still moves the needle like that. Obviously they have Tom Allen run the defense now, so we can see how that goes. I think this year, I think it was interesting to see how much of a factor, like you can tell how much of a factor history and just like, what you expect out of a team really impacted the AP poll voters votes. Like if you look at let's say SM or yeah, you can look at SMU, but you can look at again Boise State. Like I don't think in any other year that they even sniffed the top 25, even if they had, number 12 last year or whatever, got into the playoffs last year and had the magical run with Ashton Genty. And obviously, again, I think that'll be probably one of the first things that happens. Well, maybe I don't know what their schedule is this year. They could have cupcakes and be 3-0 and sit at 2021, something like that. But yeah, I think history this year doesn't hasn't mattered as much. And obviously, none of this matters once you get to the college football playoff rankings. So it really doesn't matter at all. But even you look at Penn State, like a lot of what was holding Penn State back was, that notion like, oh, they're not going to win the big game. Oh, James is going to do this. Oh, Drew Allar's not going to show up here. But I think this year they're throwing that out the window. Like obviously they have to go in the field and prove it, which is why James Franklin has really not paid much attention to what, let's call it, the rat poison, as Nick Saban says. Like he has not paid attention to the rat poison. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. None of these preseason All American, none of that. That's nothing. You don't get an award for that. You're not going to hang that up. Oh yeah, I was a preseason All American. Now that's something that I would tell my grandkids if I didn't end up, playing well and my career didn't pan out. Oh yeah, I was All American. I was All American. They're like, when were you All American? Oh, preseason. Yep. So like that's different. But I mean, in the sense of this season, trying to get ready for this season, none of that really matters. That kind of brings me into my next topic. Again, we kind of talked about how Penn State and they, brought back a lot of guys, but lose Abdul Carter. You still lose on the interior front, Kezia Izzard and Devontae Thomas. So obviously there is still a question in the sense of where does Penn State's defensive line room look. Then you also had the injury to Max Granville. But last week James Franklin said that Anai White will be moving to defensive tackle. He's listed at 6'5", 275 pounds, so I would say it's about time. But I mean, what do you guys' thoughts on that? Do you think that one, it makes a big impact for him? Because James talked about him being able to see the field more, and then how much does it move the needle for Penn State, especially in that interior defensive line room?
I think it's interesting because the defensive line like could be the strength of Penn State, but it also has the least depth. I feel like out of like any position on the roster, and I feel like by moving in I White for defense end and defense tackle, it's like oh you gain depth at defensive tackle, but then you lose depth at defensive end. So it's like a weird thing where it's like good for the defensive tackle room to have that experience because like the next man up after Alonzo Ford was going to be Xavier Gilliam, who is a redshirt freshman and really doesn't have any experience playing against elite opponents. So you kind of have an eye white to kind of maybe be like more of like a veteran in that room, which I think could be good for that. But then it also you look at the defensive end room and it's like after Zariah Fisher and Denai Son, it's like Jalen Harvey, Yvonne Kamaju, Chaz Coleman's hitting a lot of buzz. It's like there really isn't anyone. And so I think it makes Max Granville's injury all that more important for Penn State. I think that's a real blow to their offensive line. But I still think the defensive line is going to be okay, barring any like serious injuries to like Denai, Zane, Zariah. And the thing that like I'm sure is concerning is like Zariah hasn't been able to get on the field really. Like dealt with injuries his whole career. Like if that happens, like Penn State's defensive line, like it's not going to look the same. Like you're going to have a really young guy starting like on a top three team in the country. So I think it's just interesting. I still think it's going to be a strength for them though, because you can't deny Zane. Like those are two of the best defensive players in the country. So I think Anai switching gives them needed depth at defensive tackle, but then takes away needed depth at defensive end. But James did say that Anai could like rotate and play some defensive end still. I mean, he still knows how to play the position. So maybe it'll all work out with that, but it'll be interesting to see like how much that actually happens because I think he'll mostly just be playing defensive tackle now. So
Yeah, I mean, when James first said that Anai was going to move to the interior, I mean, I thought it was interesting because I mean, obviously, there's a lot of just young like depth guys at end because obviously after denying Zariah, there's just not really a whole lot of like proven on the field like in an actual game. Right? I mean, there's some younger guys who are getting like buzz. Like I mean, obviously, like Chaz Coleman had like almost everyone was talking about him last Tuesday's practice, but. I mean, it's not yet like proven on the field, and I mean, I could see. I mean, if Sariah Fisher, if he happens to deal with like an injury again, I could maybe see Anai being moved. Maybe he moves back to end if like depth gets really bad there, if some injuries happen. But I mean, I think, but I mean, I do feel like I guess like the Penn States, they're confident in like their younger guys at end. So I mean, maybe we'll see like Jalen Harvey, like Coleman, or like Yvonne. I mean both Yvonne and Coleman. It's like I mean, obviously Penn State hasn't given any green lights to burn red shirts yet, but Yvonne and Chaz were both stood out to Franklin as freshmen this offseason. So, I mean, yeah, I think it just shows that Penn State has some confidence in the younger guys at end.
Yeah, I mean, I think it can be twofold. Like, if you look at the defensive end room, I think there is some confidence there. I think you look at Kamaju, you look at Chaz Coleman, which he may not like. Again, James Franklin was talking about, the green light and everything, and he said he thinks he's a yellow light, and they're like, "What are you talking about? Like, come on." So there is definitely that chance. I definitely see him at even if it's not in the beginning of the year, moving into the rotation at some point. I think that confidence exists there. But I also think it's a case of need for Penn State. I think that if you look at the top three guys, again, Alonzo Ford, Zane Durant, and Xavier Gilliam, it looks good. But if you look at last season, Penn State had about five guys who could probably start anywhere in the country. Again, Zane Durant, Devontae Thomas, Keziah Izzard, Keem Beeman before he left the program. Like they had depth for days on that interior front. So I think it was a move to really be able to have that depth, be able to one, get an eye on the field, and two, really make an impact. It looks like to me, at least from an outsider's perspective, not recruit we're not recruiting him, but not knowing an eye white, coming out of high school, he was listed at what 6'5", 230, coming out as a 4-star out of Philly, of course. Um, he's obviously grown into the position, I would say. You kind of think about it just like how Dakari Nelson, when he moved down from safety to linebacker, it was a matter of him really just like he developed into a linebacker. Like he was too big to play safety. Like it didn't really make sense to stick him at at the top two. So I think that was really a move that was kind of works out for both Penn State and an I White. I would assume at least. I think that his size will be something good to add to that defensive front. I think that also, or to that interior part of the front. I think that also allows some versatility in terms of schemes. We know that Jim Knowles likes to make things confusing. He likes to really disrupt teams. I think that chance to really be able to, okay, we need you to, get there, get out to the C gap, whatever. Like Anai White's been playing there for so long. I think the comfortability for him to be able to work in these stunts and different things like that, I think that'll be kind of perfect for Penn State. I think another thing to mention, as we said, was with Chaz Coleman. He's kind of been getting all the buzz, as Jim Knowles calls him, the Tasmanian Devil. Like he has really come on, and he just arrived in the summer. There's definitely kind of a chance for him to kind of play early in the year. So that I mean that'll really show us where Penn State's defensive line is, as we talked about. there are questions, but at the same time, there's a lot of confidence. You have Deion Barnes leading the way. You have Denai Dennis Sutton and Zane Durant as your top two guys who will be getting national. There's no reason why both of them shouldn't be either big team, I mean, all big team first, all big
You can do it.
and first team or second team. I would say first, but we never know. Maybe another guy steps up and deny gets moved to second. I think Zane you can kind of pencil in for first team as long as he's, the same as he was last year because obviously he just didn't get the buzz last year. I think he doesn't have to be, 10 times better than last year to draw that buzz, to draw all American buzz, things like that. I think they're on. I think it's a matter of where everyone else is. So I mean, if Chaz Coleman is kind of able to slide in and kind of be that guy on the edge, be disruptive, make plays. I mean, I think that will put Penn State in a great position, probably a position they maybe didn't expect to be in terms of, okay, Granville goes down and you lose, all the guys you talked about. So I think that'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to kind of see where he takes off from there. Well, that's all we have for today. One more thing for you guys to do. First, if you can head to psucollegian.com, there is a newsletter tab. Click that, click football sign up. You can sign up for our newsletter. You'll have newsletters delivered right to your inbox. Soon, we will have an opportunity for you guys to ask any questions that you have to us about our coverage in Penn State football. So make sure you tune into that. You'll see it on there when it pops in your inbox. Other than that, again, visit us at PSU Collegian and follow us on socials. We'll see you next time.